Today we're talking about tourism. There's that notion when you go on a adventure somewhere that you've never been before that you're never going to come back. You probably won't. I remember going to Texas. I might have talked about this before. It was just a little moment that stuck with me. I'm driving across western Texas through all those empty spaces, and I pull over into this little town, and there's a little park and a gift shop, and I went in there, got a trinket, and talked to this girl at the counter, and there weren't any other customers around. It was a rather deserted town at a quiet time of the day. And I was just on a road trip across Texas. And so we were talking about that for a few moments, and then she said, "See you later." And there was a pause, and then she said, "Actually, I guess I probably won't see you later because you probably won't come this way again." And then we talked a little bit about how we should cherish the moments that we're in because we're always surrounded by moments that will never come again. And while I'm talking about that, just because it popped into my head, I think it's so important to capitalize on inspiration. There's going to be times when you feel good about life, when you feel like there's no fog in your head, when you feel like it's easy to think about things critically, to come up with original ideas, and taking a moment to journal, taking a moment to do the things that inspire you in the moment when inspiration hits. That's really important because there's a lot of times when I don't feel like I have good ideas. I don't feel like I'm in the mood to be creative. And sometimes we just need rest. Sometimes it's just not the time for doing things that are extremely creative or things that require a lot of mental energy. So if you feel like inspiration strikes, if you feel excited about something, if you feel like you want to do something now, start doing it now. Because if you don't, when you get around to saying, well, I think I want to go do that, you might not really be able to do it. If you've ever tried to write something, you might find that inspiration comes when you're not looking for it. That great idea comes while you're taking a shower or going for a morning walk. It doesn't come when you sit down and say, I'm going to sit down and spend 12 hours straight forcing myself to make my way through this content. It's like that in gaming. I find there have been many times in my life when I have thought to myself, I just spent 10 hours playing this game and it was fun. And it was effortless. And then there's also those moments when I've said, oh, I have a day off. I have all of this time I could spend gaming or catching up on something. And the crazy thing is, when that day off comes, I don't really feel like playing anything. And I wind up just resting or doing something else and then saying, I wonder, why is it? Why is it that I had all that time, but I just wasn't really in the mood, So inspiration comes when you aren't looking for it. So always be ready to seize the moment when it does. Anyways, back to my story about moments never coming again. And it's true, we should treat those moments as precious because they are never going to come again. We should say, I'm going to make the best of today because it's not going to ever come again. I'm going to go to work and I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to be privileged to be there, and I'm going to enjoy the experience of it because I don't necessarily know that this is an experience that's ever going to be in my life again. And if today is the only day I have, then I want that to be a really good day. So cherishing the moment, that's important. But it's not really what I'm talking about in this video primarily. What I'm talking about is the idea of what it is that makes tourism meaningful. When you go out into the world or into a virtual space like a video game that's an amazing form of escapism and imagination and exploration, you don't go there saying, I'm going to keep coming back here again and again. If I go to Chicago, I am going to take in all of the sights. I'm going to enjoy the experience of being there. But I'm not doing it because I think I'm going to be there every day for the rest of my life. It's the exact opposite. I'm enjoying the experience because I know I'm not going to be back tomorrow. I know that I'm not going to see everything there is to see, not even close. I know that it's just a little snapshot of something much bigger. And it's not about seeing everything. It's not about leveling up my character. It's about having that perspective that comes from broadening my understanding of the world. I think about this in gaming when we approach topics like, why is it that we go on a quest in an RPG? Is it because doing the quest is going to make your level go up and you're going to have a higher number next to your name? Your character is going to be higher level, so you go ahead and you do another quest because it's going to give you XP. Or are you doing it because you don't need to do it? Your character's fine. You're doing it because the world is interesting and you want to know just a little bit more about the world that you live in. As I've been dabbling in World of Warcraft lately, and then thinking about the difference in terms of how playing some WoW feels versus playing Elder Scrolls Online, which has been my main MMO for a while. That's a big distinction that I've noticed. When I log into WoW and I start questing, I don't necessarily feel like I care too much about any of the quest stories. It all feels a lot like nonsense. Not to say that any fantasy isn't containing some nonsense, but the quests don't really interest me particularly. I don't have this overwhelming sense of desire to know more about the world because the world seems like it's kind of silly anyway. But what I do have a desire to do is to level up my character. I want to go do the quests because then I'm going to get the reward at the end. But in Elder Scrolls, it's different. It has nothing to do with thinking, oh, well, if I do that quest, I'm going to get more XP. It's pretty much a level scaled world. I can go anywhere I want with my character. I've already leveled it up plenty enough. And so if I do a quest here and there, the reason I do it is because it's a chance to interact with characters in the world. It's a chance to get a feel of that sense of place that is Tamriel. And that's what makes it so special and cool. But the other nice thing is I don't feel any obligation to do the quests. I don't have a sense of I need to do them all because my account isn't complete if I didn't do all the content. It's all about just saying, I'm existing in this world. And then if I can feel like the world is a little more rich by gaining perspective in it, then that's the cherry on top. Sort of like going on a trip to New York and seeing all the tall buildings and seeing the hustle and the bustle and all of the sights that there are to see. It's amazing. Doesn't mean I want to live there. Doesn't mean that I need to do something specific to make that vacation memorable or meaningful. And that brings us to the point I'm trying to make, the big point here, and that is that we tend to go through life doing the opposite of tourism. We go to places that are temporary places to be. And it doesn't matter what we're talking about, because the truth is we're not going to be around forever. We're going to rise from the dust and return to the dust. But we have this desire for permanence. And so we go to places which are a temporary stop on a journey. And we want them to be permanent things. And that's a contradiction. It's a paradox that exists in our minds because we're trying to use temporary materials to build permanent structures. We should be happy and excited to have the experiences that we have in our lives. But they should just be that, experiences, not objectives that are tied to some specific outcome. We should have that notion that we're going to make the most of today, but also we don't really have any expectation that today is going to define tomorrow. And life gets to be so overwhelming with things we think we need to do. Everything is a subscription that makes us think you can't just watch a bunch of Star Trek and then say you're a Star Trek fan. No, you've got to stay current with the franchise. And every year when there's some new spinoff, you've got to watch that one too. It's not enough to say, I watched the Lord of the Rings movies and I liked them. No, you've got to read the books, and you've got to watch the movies, and you've got to watch the spin-off shows. And you've got to stay current in some way with the community. We use that word a lot. The community. You've got to stay connected to the community. You can't just play a game. You've also got to join the Discord. You can't just have an experience and then say that was amazing and move on. You have to keep having that experience, and that's fine if you want to keep coming back because it's something that keeps on adding value to your life. Where it's not fine is when we start to have that feeling about everything. We can't just rest and enjoy our life, because if you rest on your day off, there's unwatched TV shows that are sitting there in the back of your mind saying, you know what? You didn't spend your time off well enough because you didn't catch up on those TV shows that you should have been watching. And you betrayed your favorite franchises because you didn't log into all of the games that are there vying for your attention that you're supposed to be loyal to. And then you go to work and you think, well, you know, what if something bad happens and, you know, I lose my job or I don't do well enough? Because we don't have this notion of just go to work and do the best you can. and serve with joy and purpose. No, we have this attitude. You have to figure out what the next 5 years look like. You've got to have a roadmap. You've got to keep on coming up with new ways to make a case for why you need to level up more. If you get to level 80, then we're going to increase the level cap to 85. Not because there's new content, but because we want you to once again feel like you have to grind. And in our temporary lives, we start to feel like we can't enjoy any part of our lives. Our work is all consuming. Our relaxation is all consuming. And we're stuck on this treadmill. You know, I was just outside. I went for a walk this morning, and I go out there, and there's these cars slowly snaking through the park, like this big park, Memorial Park next to where I live. The cars go in one side and they go out the other side, and they eyedropper one at a time across the road and into the parking lot of a school where they go to drop off their kids. And there's a normal morning for a successful person living a high performance lifestyle. Their idea of family is that you're going to load your child into a car, and then you're going to sit in a traffic jam so that you can go drop them off at the door of the school. And that's the idea of quality parenting. It's just part of life. You're going to sit in traffic for everything. You're going to keep on doing all of the things because your life, I guess, wouldn't be good enough if you didn't, right? But somewhere in there, it just feels fake. It feels disingenuous. It feels like life should be something different, something more than just always having another thing that you have to do, because if you didn't do it, the world would end. You have to go watch sports and take your kids to do sports, and you've got to stay up to date on all the TV shows, and you've got to do all the things, and you've got to stay in touch with all the people in your life who don't even care about you, because that's just what we do. Life gets to have so much noise in it. And sometimes you just have to stop it. And it's not to say that any of those things I've talked about are intrinsically bad. It's not that we should stop commuting to work. It's not that we should not take our kids to school. It's not that we shouldn't watch TV anymore. It's not that we shouldn't have cell phones in our pockets. It's not that any one genre of game is healthy or unhealthy for our psyche. It's that we need to look at all of these experiences as tourists. We're there to have an experience that moves us, an experience that inspires us, but ultimately not an experience which is permanent. And when you start to have that notion that I'm going to live my life and I'm going to have a blessed life and I'm going to enjoy the things I do, and I'm not necessarily going to have an objective, and I might come back tomorrow or I might not come back at all, and I'm just going to listen to my heart. What does it feel right now? What do I feel I need to do? And then I'm going to do that. I was thinking about diet and like, how do you eat healthy? You know, and people say, well, you need to do this or that. But if you just listen to how you feel. Like, I can just tell you 100% that I feel better after I eat a salad or something like that versus a whole bunch of McDonald's or Taco Bell. I'm not saying that I'm sciencing it out. I'm just saying there's some things that make me feel better and there's some things that don't. You know, like, you don't have to be really, really analytical to understand that if something seems like it's bearing good fruit in your life, it probably is. And if it doesn't seem like it is, it probably isn't. But sometimes we ignore those signals, and we don't just say, well, that doesn't seem like it's good for me, so I don't think I'm going to do that. We second guess our judgment because we think we need to have a reason to heed that still small voice. But we really don't. You can totally just say, I'm not feeling that right now, so I'm not going to do it. But there's something else that's kind of captured my attention, something else that really is getting me excited, so I'm going to go do that thing. And you'll find that when you listen to your heart and just follow the path that seems most appealing in the moment, that will lead you to unexpected places. You will wind up doing things you didn't plan to do and seeing things you didn't plan to see. And sometimes that will cause you to spend more time doing nothing, relaxing, resting, just allowing yourself that space to be you. And then there's going to be other times when listening to that call makes you go places you never would have thought were prudent to go, pursuing things you never would have thought were the right thing to do, or weren't ever really within the parameters of your expectations. When we stop putting ourselves into a box, then we can just live in the moment. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to have outcomes which lead us to progress. There's that notion that if you don't plan out your progress for the rest of your life, you're not going to make any. But that's not true. The fact that I don't every day make a mental promise that I'm going to keep no-lifing one particular game for the rest of its time in service doesn't mean that I'm not going to potentially continue to play the game, come back to it, make progress, and one day achieve things in the game that maybe I haven't achieved yet. You can leave the future open-ended and say, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe nothing else comes of this. Or maybe a lot more adventures keep on spinning off of this. But I don't have to jump every time there's a new thing. I don't have to go through life with that quiet feeling of missing out, that sense that I'm not really good enough, that sense that I wasn't good enough at work, then my time off came around, and I guess I failed at even prioritizing the important things in life during my time off because I didn't get through my content that I thought I was supposed to do for fun. Sometimes we overthink things, and we just need to let go and say it is what it is. And then you can have this sense of peace, because maybe you just needed a rest, and so you allowed yourself that grace. And there is something to be said for living our life in a more whole and mindful way. I was thinking about how So often we talk about the problems caused by too much scrolling on our phones. Like, I think everybody knows it. Everyone's feeling that sense of, I need to stop it. I need to scroll on my phone less. I need to spend less time doing some of this stuff that doesn't really add any value in my life. And I think that that's going to be the elephant in the room to keep on talking about, because it's so easy to be distracted. But that leads me to one more point, and that is, we talk about distraction. We say, well, it's so easy to be distracted, and it's true. Social media distracts us, our news feeds distract us. Just that temptation to go down the rabbit hole of an infinite scroll distracts us. But the question also is, what does it distract us from? Like, what are we being distracted from? If we're distracted, then what is it that's distracting us? What is it that our attention is supposed to be on? And that lends me to this realization that sometimes we try to treat the symptom instead of the root cause. The truth is, it's not necessarily that we need to say, we've got to scroll on our phones less. Why do we scroll on our phones? Maybe it's because we're lonely. Maybe that's the elephant in the room. That people feel lonely even when they're surrounded by other people. I was at the mall in Kansas City yesterday, and I ate at the food court, sitting there eating teriyaki chicken and looking around, and everybody's on their phones. Like, there's not a single person that's not just looking at a phone. And you look at that and you think, that is kind of crazy, isn't it? How much devices have changed the way we look at life. But is it really about the phone? Or is it that you can be next to somebody and you can feel alone because you don't feel like there's enough of a sense of commonality to have something to talk about? Or you're alone because it feels like it's hard to make connections with other people because they're so preoccupied with whatever it is that they're doing that you can't really make organic, spontaneous connections very easily. Sometimes it's loneliness that makes the scrolling on the phone happen. If you could solve the loneliness problem, then you would solve the scrolling on the phone problem, right? Like, people find a solution to their problem so that they can meet their needs. It's not the phone that's the problem. It's that people no longer feel like they can meet their needs socially with real connections. That's the challenge. That's the problem. And maybe we feel exhausted too. That's the other problem. Because everything feels like some sort of a big commitment. It's sort of like if I said I wanted to play a game that I thought was really cool, but then I realized that the game is going to cost me hundreds of hours of my life to finish. I'm going to have to learn new mechanics, learn new systems, watch guides on YouTube, go research the Wikipedia when I get stuck, And now what started it off as this feeling of, I want to go get lost in an amazing open world and go on a grand adventure, has turned into, this game feels like it's just about as difficult for me to get my head wrapped around as going to work. I've got to figure it out. I've got to put effort into this. And then there's that notion, if you don't put in enough effort, then you're not serious. You're not a real fan. And so there's increasing examples of hobbies that feel like they're more of a duty, a burden, a job, than a real source of escape or of joy or of refreshing reset. So what do? We say, okay, I think I'll just pull out my phone and see what's going on Reddit. I'll scroll for a little while because I don't have the mental energy to devote to a big project right now. So I'll just do something small on my phone. And that goes back full circle to that notion of being a tourist. There's a lot of things we can do in life, and they don't necessarily have to be difficult. They don't necessarily have to be a lifetime commitment. They can just be something we do because we enjoy them in this moment. And that's enough. When you realize you don't have to make every decision something that gets treated as an existential question about the rest of your life, then you can just stop trying so hard and let things be what they are. You go spend time with somebody. Does it mean that you're going to go spend time with them for the rest of your life? All the time? Not necessarily. Maybe it's just today. That's why I think that's one of the problems with things like dating apps. You know, you if you're lucky enough to get somebody to respond to you, you know, you find somebody on a dating app, and then you don't even know who that person is. Like, they're a stranger. But right out of the gate, there's that implied obligation that you're supposed to be somehow connected to them for the rest of your life. Like, before you even get around to hanging out for a cup of coffee, you have to sort of make this mental decision. Is this a person who maybe could, you know, be a person who I spend the rest of my life with or something, you know? Or we're just super fickle. There's also that, you know? It's kind of interesting how life has these dichotomies, right? Like, on one hand, we get so tied up with feeling like everything has to be some kind of a huge commitment. And then we also have the problem of being really avoidant because of that, maybe. Maybe because we think everything is, you know, so weighty, we wind up making no commitments at all. And then we wonder, why do we not get any return on our investment? Why do we not get any value in our life? Because we never commit to anything. We run away from commitment. And maybe part of that is because we have a commitment overload going on. Because everything is a commitment. Like, it used to be, probably you commit to, you know, maybe your work and your spouse or something like that. People used to go to church more, and like, people would commit to their, you know, to their, I don't know, church group or something, probably too, you know. But now everything is a commitment. You got to commit to you know, your Paramount Plus membership too. That's also a lifetime commitment. So since everything is something that we have to treat at that level, then it comes down to one of those things where if everything is important, then nothing is important. If everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority. I've seen that at work many times. People have that notion, well, you got to focus on this and you got to focus on that. You got to do all these different things. Well, you know what? At some point, you have too many tabs open on your browser. At some point, you can't keep on watching everything. You can't do 100 things at once. At some point, you can't make everything the number one priority, because if you don't remove some things from that list, all you're really doing is saying nothing matters. And then you wonder, why is it that people are burned out and they're not really doing anything very well? Because you didn't make just a few things important and then let other things be acts of tourism. You try to make everything something that has to become a forever home. And we get tired of that. We get tired of everything being the next forever thing. Because sometimes all you really need to do is live in the moment. And that's something that gets harder and harder to do when we're overwhelmed by a lot of low quality content and content that we don't need to spend a lot of our time thinking about, being elevated to the point where we feel like if we don't make the right decision, we're betraying ourselves or others. Truth is, no, you don't need to finish Skyrim. You don't need to play The Witcher 3. You don't need to play every MMO on the market. You don't need to do any of that stuff. All you need to do is enjoy the life you have. Make the most of the moments before you. And let it be what it is. And do it with a good attitude. Because despite the fact you might never go this way again, maybe because you may never go this way again, it's very important to make every engagement, every encounter, one that's positive and memorable and filled with all of the right kind of energy. Ironically, you can't have the right kind of energy when you're always looking at all of the things in your life saying, I hope I get time to finish that. I hope that I can keep the momentum going, because, you know, God forbid I lose momentum and then I can't keep on going. You know, Lindsey Vonn, the Olympic medalist downhill skier, recently had some injuries, and she's been in the news that she had fallen, and somebody said something, you know, and it's just internet people being internet people, you know, and I will say, like, people don't need to make decisions for other people. Like, everyone has their 2 cents of what they think, you know, and sometimes that's toxic in its own right. But still, somebody said something about this, and they said, you know, why would she have a torn ACL and then proceed to continue expecting that she's going to compete in the Olympics? Like, is it really a surprise after an already significant injury that she then proceeded to go on intending that she would keep going, and then she had another injury that followed it? Well, I don't know. I mean, you can say it's not related, but I don't know. It kind of looks like it's a weird coincidence. Like, it's probably related, because Like she wasn't at the top of her game. Like maybe there's a point where she should have just said, you know what? I don't need to make the decision to keep on competing, to keep on doing this thing. Because what my body needs right now is a rest. But think about all the pressure though. Think about the social pressure. Think about the sense that, you know, this career I've chosen defines my life. If I don't keep on competing, if I don't keep pushing myself, if I don't keep doing all this stuff, that takes away a part of who I am. Right? So like whether you're a Olympic medalist skier or you're a 20-year WoW veteran, like at some point there's the sunk cost fallacy, right? There's that sense, I had a good experience before. This was such an important part of my life. So I have to keep on having good experiences with this. I can't bookend it. I can't just say, oh, well, you know, it is what it is. Maybe some other time. I can't do that. I have to keep on going. Even if some part of me deep down inside knows, you know what, I think I kind of got my value out of that. And now maybe I need to do something else, right? But we ignore those signals because we think, well, everyone else expects me to keep on going. And if this was an important part of my life, it must need to keep being an important part of my life. I can't just stop. Because if I stop, that's like death. If I stop, that's conceding that that era of my life is over with, right? But that's kind of a false way of looking at things. Like sometimes you just have to say, I'm going to do what I think is right for me in the moment. And maybe that means taking a step away. Maybe that means accepting that a lot of things in your life aren't going to be finished. Maybe it means just having a good day and realizing that all of the good days of yesterday are not necessarily meant to be repeated. A few months ago, I got on an airplane and I went to New York and I drove around Manhattan. I went and looked out of the World Trade Center and I saw the Capitol in Washington, D.C., all that stuff. And that was pretty cool. And that's something I will remember for the rest of my life. Not because it was so groundbreaking, but because it was interesting. It's a perspective thing. And I don't know. I might go back to New York one day. I might not. And that's the beauty of it. I don't know. The beauty is it's open-ended. The beauty is that tomorrow's a new day. And maybe I'm going to go have some more really cool adventures and see new things that I never thought I would see. But I don't need to see that whole roadmap right now. I don't need to plan it all out. I don't need to follow some sort of a equation to determine what the most efficient way to use my time is. All I need to do is enjoy today, have a good attitude about it, and let today be enough. You know, you can worry so much about all the things in life that you think maybe you need to do better, you need to do more of, whatever. And the truth is, all of our lives are temporary. So, I'll close as I started. Don't use temporary materials to build permanent structures. We're all only going to be here for a short period of time. So don't focus so much on doing everything. Don't make everything about trying to somehow get through all the content. Just focus on having a good experience. I mean, I really think that's part of why gaming used to be fun. Like, we used to enjoy our gaming experiences so much because we didn't think, oh, I need to finish all of this stuff. And if I don't finish it, then, you know, I'm not going to have a good gaming career. Like, we didn't think about that. We just found something that seemed cool, and then if our parents were cool enough to allow us, we would spend all of an afternoon on a weekend playing that game. You know, like, that's how it was. You didn't think, oh, I'm going to play this game for the rest of my life. You were just glad you got to play it right now. Like, those are the kinds of experiences. You know, I've been a fan of King's Quest for so long. It was such a cool honor to be able to meet Ken and Roberta Williams, who made that game, and were the founders of Sierra Online. Back in, I guess, 2023, I met them. So, like a year and a half ago, I guess, now. And yet, like, probably the most favorite gaming franchise of my early childhood, I never finished all those games. I got stuck halfway through them and then lost interest. Because there were no help manuals, and it was before the era of being able to just look for a walkthrough on YouTube. But they captured my imagination, and that's what mattered. It was never about finishing the game. It was never about getting the max score. It was never about somehow managing to, you know, get to the point where you could see the end credits roll. It was about being part of something that for a moment in time captured my imagination and made life feel just a little bit more colorful. As always, good luck on your adventure. Till next time, thanks so much for watching.